two, 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 two. Two, 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 two. Yeah.
Yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and welcome to this conversation this evening as part of the National Press Club in collaboration with University of South Africa School of Business Leadership and the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Can I ask that we settle down? Those who are outside, if you could please come through. Minister DM and other dignitaries should be coming to start the program with us. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this joint roundtable discussion. A hearty warm welcome to the dignitaries this evening, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, Deputy Minister Andries Nel, Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, panel members that will be introduced as we kick off the panel discussion that will form part of the evening's conversation. In this particular instance, I'm referring more to the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Leonard Lekgetho, Advocate Ndimutivi. Advocate, what you started earlier seemed to have just spilled over into my narrative. Mr. Leonard Lekgetho, acting head of Special Investigating Unit, Prof. Paul Modau, Associate Professor at UNISA's College of Law, as well as Ms. Antoinette Slabert, who will also be joining the panel. I also extend a very warm welcome to the members joining us this evening, members of the press club, but also people drawn from a whole array of disciplines in the School of Law, drawn from the media studies and political science, as well as the dignitaries joining us this evening. I don't want to say I welcome anyone from UNISA because we are here as their guests. But before we kick off our program, I'm going to request that we all rise and we take the national anthem, because this 30 years of the Constitution, among others, it meant that there was one anthem that brought us all together. Let's take the national anthem. Thank you. Once again, good evening and welcome to this joint roundtable discussion. On the 2nd of February 1990, the apartheid regime announced the banning of political organizations, in the main extra-parliamentary political organizations, that also heralded the release from prison of political prisoners, thereby ushering an environment that prepared for negotiations that gave birth to a negotiated settlement that is South Africa. 2 years after the democratic elections were held, President Nelson Mandela signed the final draft of the Constitution into law. And speaking at the signing, President Mandela reminded us that this is our national soul, our compact with one another as citizens, underpinned by our highest aspirations and our deepest apprehensions, close quote. And I think for me that succinctly captured the mood of where we were at that point. The journey that was traveled, our bloodied history, the history of subjugation, the history of oppression, of exclusion, of deprivation, a history that denied a whole healthy population access to economic opportunities. A history of a people denied the right to the type of education that they clamored for. A history that led to able-bodied men and women relegated to the periphery of the economy purely on the basis of race, in the basis of gender, and all related elements. So as we reflect on the 30 years of our Constitution, tonight we will dissect, we'll delve deeper into all of those elements, but we'll seek to reflect a mirror to all of us and reflect how far we've come as a society, as a country. Because this Constitution is about you, it's about me, it's about protecting you, it's about ensuring that we all in unison agree that we will work together to build a country that belongs to all. Good evening and welcome. My name is Albi Modise. I'm with the National Press Club. On no office hours, you'll find me at the Gau train, making sure the train moves between Pretoria and Johannesburg. Let's kick off the program by firstly allowing for the welcome address by Professor Mpongwebe, the Vice Principal Research Postgraduate Studies, Innovation and Commercialization at the University of South Africa. Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Mr. Panel Moderator, Albi Modise. Mr. Program Director, somebody once told me that when you get old, you lose three most important things. First is your memory. Second is the ability to remember what you have just said. And I forgot the last one. Mr. Program Director, the brief that I was given was very brief, and I'm going to be very brief. Let me start by recognizing the presence of honored guests, Honorable Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Honorable DM Andries Nel, Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Advocate Ndimu TV, National Director of Public Prosecution, Mr. Leonard Lekgeto, Acting Head of Special Investigating Unit, Professor Paul Mudau, Associate Professor at the UNISA College of Law, Antoinette Slabat from the National Press Club, members of the National Press Club, members of Parliament here, esteemed guests from business, civil society, various from national, provincial, and local government departments, distinguished guests, colleagues and cousins, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am here to welcome you on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Buleleng Ngabula, who unfortunately was unable to join us due to ill health. I am both humbled and elevated by this honor and privilege to welcome you to this important roundtable as we reflect on the 30 years of South Africa's Constitution, a living document that has shaped not only our laws, but the way we imagine ourselves as society. Ladies and gentlemen, I must say I was impressed by the DM the other day at the University of Pretoria when he made us recite the preamble of the Constitution. I was even thinking perhaps this should be a prayer, not a prayer as in court, but a prayer equivalent to the church at the assemblies at schools. This will teach our kids about patriotism. And you should consider, as the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, partnering with the Department of Basic Education in this regard. Honorable Minister, today is not a ceremonial moment. It is a moment of honest reflection. Over 3 decades, we have seen real progress, rights expanded, institutions built, and a democratic culture that continues to assert itself even under strain. At the same time, we acknowledge the challenges that persist in our society. The roundtable matters because it brings together 3 communities that carry different responsibilities but share a common duty of care to the public. The government, tasked with the delivery and accountability, academia, tasked with evidence, insight, and long-term thinking, and the media, tasked with telling the truth, asking difficult questions, and keeping the public informed. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, if we approach this as a system conversation, one insight stands out: no single sector can fix the whole on its own. Progress happens when the system learns, when data meets lived experience, when policy meets practical realities, and when public dialogues becomes more constructive than combative. Honorable Minister, as UNISA, the University of the Land and Home of Leaders, we are proud of what has been achieved by the country, and that in many ways is the discipline of constitutional democracy. UNISA has an MOU with the SIU to provide training on forensic auditors, and we are also exploring other areas to expand training with law enforcement, working together with the state. We are also pleased to see Mr. Lekgetho here tonight as part of the panel. We have realized that to go far, we need to go together. UNISA is not just a university that serves society, but a key partner of government. Our doors are open for partnership and doing business with different stakeholders. And this is reflected even on our rankings, as it is improved from position 13 nationally to a competitive top 5 in the country. The University of South Africa, otherwise known as the University of UNISA in social media circle, is responsible for 34% of students registered in university education in South Africa. So we remain committed to ensuring that our students get the support they need. Honorable Minister, as I conclude, bakone ba re moeng e tla ka ga e rije ka wena. Ge o fitla ba re shago la moeng le bewa ke mongai. Gomme ba fetša ka gore moeng o naka dimaripa. This proverb highlights the positive impact of welcoming guests and reciprocal nature of hospitality. Welcome to the University of the Land, the colossal from which Africans obtain their knowledge, and most in the know and in leadership are the product of this noble institution. From the late President Mandela to President Mbeki and to the current incumbent President Ramaphosa, to mention just a few. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think you really rolled out the red carpet to welcome us. So Monday was Freedom Day in South Africa. In 1994, hundreds of South Africans voted for the first time to bring into place a democratic dispensation to restore the dignity of all South Africans, to share in the proceeds of freedom, to allow for opportunity to open for all South Africans to contribute towards the building of a nation. So 2026 marks the 30th anniversary of the Constitution of South Africa, which was adopted in 1996, as I mentioned earlier. And tonight, the National Press Club, working with the UNISA's Graduate School of Business Leadership, convenes this particular setup. But to tell us more and narrate much better on that particular partnership, I'm going to invite the National Press Club General Manager, Musidi Mkhele, to deliver a setting the scene address as we prepare ourselves for the next part of the program. Mo?
Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, Deputy Minister Andries Nel, Advocate Ndimo Tibi, Mr. Leonard Lekgetho, Professor Mfariseni Buteli Namankonde, Professor Mpongwepe, Professor Paul Mudau, Ms. Antoinette Slabet, distinguished guests, members of the media, fellow South Africans. We gather tonight at the close of Freedom Month to do something deeply South African. We celebrate and we interrogate. We celebrate 30 years of a constitution that changed the world, and we interrogate whether we have lived up to it. 30 years ago, we did more than just write a document. We wrote a promise that the law would see everyone, that dignity would not depend on your address, that power would answer to the people. That promise became the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. and it remains one of the most courageous, most progressive contracts between a state and its people anywhere on earth. And for 30 years, it has held. Through elections and crisis, through scandals and renewal, through hope and heartbreak, it has held. That is worth celebrating. That is the victory of Freedom Month. But a constitution is not self-executing. It needs guardians. It needs parliament. It needs courts. It needs government. And yes, it needs the fourth estate. I stand here tonight on behalf of the National Press Club, on behalf of media practitioners, journalists, who show up every day to the unglamorous work of democracy. We are the fourth estate, not elected, but essential, not perfect, but present. For 3 decades, the media has been the public's eyes and ears at that critical line the Constitution draws between power and abuse. We have told the story of transformation. We have exposed corruption. We have amplified the voices of the vulnerable. We have asked the questions that others could not or would not. Whether the Constitution worked, we recorded it. When it was violated, we revealed it. When the people were forgotten, we reminded the country they exist. That is our role. That is our patriotic duty. And in a constitutional democracy, a free, independent, sometimes irritating press is not a threat to freedom. It is freedom. That is why the National Press Club drives thought leadership with UNISA, because democracy needs both the newsroom and the classroom. It needs evidence and ethics. It needs scholarship to present the law and journalism to test it in real time. UNISA brings the academic depth, the research, the next generation of legal minds. We bring the agency and the public mandate, the questions from the street. Together we create spaces like this where ideas are stress tested and the Constitution is not just studied but scrutinized. And our timing matters. On 3rd May, just 3 days from now, the world marks International Media Freedom Day. Tonight is our early down payment on that day, because media freedom is not an abstract principle. It is Section 16 of our Constitution, alive in practice. It is the reason we can convene this panel without permission. It is the reason we can put hard questions to power and broadcast the answers. Our panel members embodies the checks and balances that keep this promise alive. This is how a constitution stays alive, not in a glass case, but in a room like this, where power and scrutiny sit at the same table. Freedom Month ends tomorrow. International Media Freedom Day arrives on Saturday. Between them lies our responsibility. The promise is not a memory, it is a mandate, and it belongs to all of us. We welcome this conversation. We welcome the next 30 years and beyond. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Musidi, for setting the scene remarks. Let me now invite the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Deputy Minister Andries Nel, to deliver a message of support for this evening's gathering. Dear.
We will have to, as they say in legal Latin, mutatis mutandis. Program Director, thank you very, very much. I am going to, as they say in high diplomatic language, stand on the protocol that has been observed. But nonetheless, it's a great pleasure to be here in support of the Minister, hosted by UNISA, with the eminent panel of Advocates Motibi and Lekgetho, and being with the communicators of our nation. A great pleasure indeed. I've been asked to deliver a message of support. but I'm going to deliver a message requesting support, your support. But before I do that, I do want to accede to a suggestion or a request, which I was going to do in any case, even if I wasn't asked. And that is to ask all of us to rise and to recite the preamble to the Constitution of the Republic. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and build a united and democratic South Africa, able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. May God protect our people. Nkosi sikelele Afrika. Morena buluka sechaba sa Jesu. God seën South Africa. God bless South Africa. Mudzimu fatuchedza Africa. Hosi katikisa Africa. Thank you. You know, I've done this many times, and each time I do it, it evokes something very deep and very special, both in myself, but also in those with whom I'm reciting that preamble. And I see sometimes people's eyes get misty, other times people's eyes brighten, and I think it's a very, very profound statement for us to make. And I think it's a statement that we must repeat very, very often. Because in many, many ways, that preamble encapsulates the essence of our nationhood. It tells us where we come from, it tells us where we are, it tells us the values that inform the society that we seek to build. And I think it's especially important that we do so tonight, when in this very important dialogue taking place as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution in 1996. I'm very fortunate and very proud to have been a member of the Constitutional Assembly and to have been part of writing the Constitution. We're celebrating this very important milestone under the theme, One Nation, Reflect, Renew, and Recommit. I'll unpack that theme a bit more, and I'm sure that the Minister is going to unpack it in even greater detail. But it's part of a commemoration that aims to be a national civic renewal campaign, a coordinated program that reaffirms constitutionalism as one of the cornerstones of our national identity and as a living instrument for justice, equality, and development. Cabinet has adopted a program meant to be a year-long, whole-of-government, whole-of-society program. And when I say year-long, I don't mean that it begins and ends in this year. But it's an intense campaign during this year that should lay the foundation for an ongoing campaign. We seek to do, amongst others, 7 key things. Firstly, to celebrate and reaffirm constitutional values. Secondly, to educate and engage citizens, especially the youth. Thirdly, to reflect and evaluate the performance of our constitutional democracy. Fourth, to promote the rule of law in everyday life. Fifth, to strengthen institutional trust and accountability. Sixth, to foster national unity and social cohesion. And lastly, but definitely not least, to recommit to the transformation of our society. And just like the constitution-making process itself, which many suggest today, very incorrectly and very ahistorically, that our constitution was imposed by outside, from outside, or that it was written in a smoke-filled room. No. As a constitutional assembly, we crossed the length and the breadth of the country. We received hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of submissions from all South Africans. And in that way, we replicated the same process that led to the adoption of a document like the Freedom Charter, which in many ways is one of the foundation stones for the Constitution that we have today. But in that spirit, we also want this campaign to reach out and involve actively all sectors, all social partners, government, business, labor, civil society, academia, the media. The 30th anniversary program aims to include public dialogue, civic education, cultural events, youth engagements, symbolic events at historic sites, etc. But this celebration takes place amidst a very, very difficult international conjuncture in which increasingly strident attacks on constitutional values, the rule of law, and the very concept of a rules-based international order are regrettably on the ascendancy. Even domestically, there are trends that we collectively need to take very seriously and need to be concerned about. The 2025-2026 IEC Voter Participation Survey, which I'm sure that many of you have read and covered, was conducted by the Human Sciences Research Council. It was released in March of this year. It concludes that the 2026 local government election is being planned in the most challenging pre-electoral climate observed over the past 30 years, marked by high levels of pessimism, frustration, and disengagement, and geographic disparities in patterns. The survey identifies the following trends. Firstly, widespread disillusionment with political leadership, leading to growing demands for more decisive, authoritarian approach to governance. Popular support for democracy is at a historic low. Preference for democracy fell from about 65% in the mid-2000s to 36% in 2025-26. Support for democracy as the preferred system is not a majority view in any province. The range runs from a low of 28 to a high of 46%. Signaling that a commitment to democracy is present, but not dominant. There's also the rise of a fatalistic view that says that, look, ultimately it doesn't matter. Whether we live in a democracy or a dictatorship, it has no impact on my life. And that view is the one that's rising the fastest. It's grown to 34% in 25-26. But very concerningly, there's an openness to non-democratic alternatives. More than 1 in 4 South Africans, 26%, now see non-democratic options as acceptable. It's the highest recorded to date. And I think of particular concern is that support for non-democratic alternatives is particularly high in KwaZulu-Natal with 33% and in Mpumalanga with 30%. We only have to think back as to what happened in 2021 to put those two trends together. That openness to non-democratic alternatives is characterized by, amongst others, a belief in, firstly, strong, decisive leadership. 71% believe elected leaders should be strong and tough rather than sensitive and tender. Rule breaking. 35% believe elected leaders should be prepared to break the rules to get things done. Executive autonomy. 23% feel that elected leaders should be able to make decisions without consultation. Most concerningly, especially for tonight's discussion, is that 26% feel that elected leaders should ignore laws or court decisions they believe are wrong. Secondly, the confidence. The second trend is that the confidence in core political institutions has weakened further, with trust indicators at historic lows. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this document. But religious leaders top the trust levels with 59%. I don't want to stir trouble here and cause disunity in the press club, but the SABC is second, also at 59%. The survey is silent about others. Traditional leaders at 41%, the IEC at 32%, very worryingly, even our courts at 31%. Politicians, political parties, of course, are at 11% and politicians at 9%. The third main trend is that dissatisfaction with democratic functioning and local service delivery has deepened, and that has contributed to a softening commitment to key democratic norms. South Africans give favorable government ratings to social security and basic services, but express deep dissatisfaction with job creation, crime reduction, housing, and core municipal services. The study concludes that local government elections 2026 is likely to be highly competitive, low trust, high risk, taking place in a context of sustained public frustration with the status quo, and the democratic discontent and anti-establishment sentiment has weakened traditional civic norms that previously supported routine electoral participation. Very importantly for tonight's discussion, the IEC study identifies misinformation as a high operational risk, and that false or misleading narratives have the potential to escalate tensions during and after the election if not addressed early. They recommend that in an era of heightened misinformation, proactive and coordinated media engagement is essential to delivering elections that are credible, transparent, and accessible. They propose a shift from reactive to proactive truth-telling in order to preempt misinformation, communicate early and consistently, and build a reservoir of trust, and to focus on civic patriotism and democratic values. And I think that's a core part of what our dialogue here tonight should be about. Because I think media and universities have a very, very crucial role to play. In February of 1994, just months before our first democratic elections, President Nelson Mandela addressed the International Press Institute. He said, and I quote, "No single person, no body of opinion, no political or religious doctrine, no political party or government can claim to have a monopoly on truth. For that reason, truth can only be arrived at through the untrammeled contrast between and among competing opinions, in which as many viewpoints as possible are given fair and equal hearing. It has therefore always been our contention that laws, mores, practices, and prejudices that place constraints on freedom of expression are a disservice to society. Indeed, these are the devices employed by falsehood to lend its strength in its unequal contest with the truth. A critical, independent, and investigative press is the lifeblood of any democracy. The press must be free from state interference. It must have the economic strength to stand up to the blandishments of government officials. It must have sufficient independence from vested interests to be bold and inquiring without fear or favor. It must enjoy the protection of the Constitution so that it can protect our rights as citizens," close quote. We agree with Madiba. The Constitution must protect the media, but the media must also defend the Constitution and our constitutional democracy. And therefore, as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Constitution, we also come here to make an appeal for your support, to help in this campaign of celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Constitution. Very often we look at these matters in very, very complex, and even our vocabulary as government communicators, we talk about multi-sectoral, cross, interdimensional, what, very, very complicated things. But I also believe very firmly in the approach of a great friend, comrade, and mentor of mine, the late Minister Pravin Gordhan, who, when I had the great privilege of deputizing him at Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, embarked on the Back to Basics program in respect of local government. And I think a Back to Basics approach is also very appropriate here. I think I want to conclude by saying, can we just think of 3 things that as we, together with the media, can do in the next year that would leave our country different and different for the better? I would argue that inculcating the reciting of the preamble to the Constitution is one of those things, both whenever we gather for official functions, for meetings, for events. And also if you as the media can, especially the electronic media, could make it a point that once a week we broadcast that as far and as wide as possible. In the same way that I think on Fridays at midday we stop to play the national anthem. I'm thinking of the effect. How would our society be if for 1 year millions and millions and millions of us repeated and recommitted to those values in the preamble? I would argue that we would have a society that would be better, that we would have a better understanding of where we come from, where we need to be, what the fundamental values are that inform who we are as a nation. It would help us deal with many of the difficult debates that we're having at the moment around economic transformation, around black economic empowerment. If we had that grasp of what our Constitution says, I think we would be able to conduct those debates in a much, much more productive way. Because the truth is that we do need to unite in order to transform our society. But equally, we need to transform our society in order to unite as a nation. And I'm talking about true unity. Secondly, and maybe lightly, but not so much more lightly, how do we build national unity when we are not even able to pronounce each other's names correctly? When we're not even able to pronounce the most basic phrases in our different languages? Reciting the preamble, if after a year most South Africans can. And so I would appeal to you if we could do that. Secondly, let us popularize the existence of the Constitution, but also let us educate what the rights are, what are our responsibilities as citizens, but also how do we act both to enforce our rights, but to give expression to our responsibilities. So a massive campaign of civic education. And in that regard, I think there's a lot of room for a powerful partnership with other organizations in civil society, such as We the People, Section 27, who have produced wonderful books like this, Know Your Constitution. Very practical, very accessible. Can you devote some part of your publications every day, once a week, to that task? I would venture to suggest that if we did just those two things, we would have a better country in a year's time. In a small way, but significant nonetheless. With that, thank you very, very much for having us, and we look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I think the significance of media in terms of our democracy cannot be overemphasized. I mean, in the lead up to a democratic dispensation, within the CODESA negotiations, the discussions around how free a public broadcaster, at that time state broadcaster as it was, i.e. the SABC was. It was a question that came up, and even at negotiations, there were also working groups that were formed to ensure that as a democratic as democratic elections were being held, an enabling environment that opened the debates for conversations to get all the parties to pitch and deposit their ideas in an open space for them to ensure that public is able to get a sense of what the different parties were offering. So the media has been central to the discussions around democracy and the fight for freedom in South Africa. And I agree with DM that there is a role that the media needs to play in terms of fostering and galvanizing society into appreciating, almost like we did in 2010, in the build-up, or even during the 2010 Soccer World Cup, how the sense of nationhood was activated and everyone had a sense of pride with the flags that were flying all over on their cars and everywhere. So is there opportunity as well? Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, the minister responsible for the portfolio of justice and constitutional development, as we mark the 30 years of our constitution, you, Minister, will have the responsibility of saying to the nation, over the past 30 years, this particular document that we agreed on, and the then President Nelson Mandela accepted and signed as the final blueprint that will guide us all, galvanize us all, and reliably also tell us what the rights are and what we need to do. So Minister Kubayi will deliver a keynote address as we mark the 30 years of our constitution. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good evening, everyone. Let me acknowledge the Deputy Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, DM Nel, the National Director of Public Prosecution of South Africa, Advocate Mutibi, the Head of Special Investigations Unit, Mr. Lekgeto, Ms. Antoinette Slabat, the Chairperson of the National Press Club, Professor Mpho Mwepe, DVC, representing the Vice Chancellor today, Prof. Paul Modau, Associate Professor at the college, who's our host here, the Acting Director General of the Justice Department, Justice and Constitutional Development Department, Ms. Pile, and all senior managers who are here. Deputy Government Spokesperson, because we are with the Press Club, I must acknowledge Brawili, I know all of us, we know him as Brawili. So these are the people that help us connect with the media space in government, and he's joined us here. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And pardon me with my voice, I've been battling with flu. It goes and comes back when I think that I've recovered. I just want to say that we're gathered here today to reflect and exchange ideas about the impact of our Constitution that has made, the Constitution has made in molding our democracy over the last 32 years, but the Constitution has 30 years in its existence. To mark this anniversary, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development has launched a long-year commemoration of the 30th of the adoption of the Constitution. So it was actually approved by Parliament on the 8th of May, coinciding with my birthday for some strange reason, or coincident, nice one. But in December the 10th, the President then signed it into law. We have decided as the department through cabinet, or as cabinet through the department, we agreed that the theme for this year, the 30 years, will be 30 years of our Constitution, one Constitution, one nation, reflect, renew, recommit. Through this commemoration, we want to call on all South Africans to recommit to the constitutional values, inclusive development and shared responsibility for nation building. 30 years later, South Africa holds diverse and often polarized views on the impact of the Constitution on our society. Many celebrate its role in entrenching democracy, enabling landmark judicial decisions, protecting vulnerable groups, and serving as a global beacon of rights-based governance. Conversely, there are those who blame the Constitution for the persistence of the socio-economic challenges such as poverty, unemployment, inequality that continue to ravage some of our own communities. These debates underscore the Constitution's living nature. It is not a static text, but a framework for ongoing national conversation which affirms the need for a renewed commitment to its founding ideals. Where necessary, and as our democracy evolves towards maturity, these conversations culminate in adaptation through amendments effected through democratic processes. The 30th anniversary provides a timely moment for reflective celebrations and critical engagements, assessing progress while identifying pathways to better realize its promise amid contemporary realities, and recommitting collectively to the realization of the Constitution's transformative promise. The theme, ladies and gentlemen, for today's conversation, 30 years of the Constitution, progress, challenges, and opportunities, places a challenge on all of us to think deeply about what has been achieved, where the fault lines are, and how to utilize what has been achieved as a foundation for entrenching a better society anchored on constitutional values. To better understand how great an achievement the adoption of the Constitution is and was, it is important to cast a glance at the depth from which we have risen to find ourselves today in a constitutional democracy. In his address at the Royal Commonwealth Society on 23rd June 1986, the then president of the African National Congress, Oliver Tambo, captured the essence of the fight against apartheid with the following words, amongst others, I quote, "We are fighting a war against the apartheid system and its inhumanities for the right to human in the land of humans," unquote. The system of colonization and later apartheid made the dehumanization of the African people a central tenet amongst the tools contained in the arsenal of oppression. Apartheid did not merely discriminate, it institutionalized and systematized human degradation. Black people under apartheid were stripped of their dignity, impoverished, and then shepherded into native reserves that were later turned into fake independent states. The 1996 Constitution is a living document in whose foundation we have built a democratic South Africa, a foundation upon which we have been working hard to transform South Africa into a non-racial, non-sexist, and a prosperous country. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bill of Rights contained in Chapter 2 of the South African's 1996 Constitution is the cornerstone of the nation's democracy, protecting all people and binding the government and private parties. It guarantees fundamental rights, including equality, human dignity, life, freedom of expression and assembly, along with socio-economic rights like housing, healthcare, and education. With regards to assessing the performance of our Constitution, because we've got to assess it, Tom Ginsburg and Aziz Haq, professors at the University of Chicago, in their paper titled Evaluating Constitutional Implementation, proposes 4 external criteria against which to evaluate the performance of a constitution, and I will turn to each in turn. Firstly, they say that constitutions are sources of legitimacy. In this respect, one of the key criteria in determining the performance of a constitution is whether or not it succeeds in creating legitimate structures and institutions in a country. Perhaps the most consequential achievement of the Constitution has been the structural integration of the justice system itself, where once there were 11 separate departments spread across the Bantustans, there is now a unified framework. The Superior Courts Act 10 of 2013 rationalized the court's hierarchy, bringing coherence to a system that had been deliberately fractured under apartheid. The Constitutional 17th Amendment Act of 2012 affirmed the Constitutional Court's apex status in all matters, affirming its role as the final arbiter of the Republic's supreme law. These reforms are, in themselves, expression of the principle that no legislative or executive action, regardless of its political weight, sits beyond the reach of judicial scrutiny. Furthermore, Chapter 9 of the Constitution recognized with considerable foresight and accordingly established a set of independent state institutions whose specific mandate is to strengthen and sustain constitutional democracy. These institutions, which include the Public Protector, South African Human Rights Commission, etc., represent a deliberate constitutional choice to institutionalize oversight rather than leave the protection of rights to the discretion of those in power. They were built into the Constitution itself rather than created by ordinary legislation. And this reflects a deliberate choice to implement oversight at the highest level of the legal order. This and many other institutions are a demonstration of how our Constitution has enabled the creation of legitimate structures and institutions in our country. The second area the researchers are reflecting, they say that Constitution ought to succeed in channeling the inevitable conflict within a society between competing forces and ideologies into a formal political institution. As we reflect our Constitution in this area, second area of that, the Constitution of South Africa established a multi-party democratic system with regular, free, and fair elections managed by an independent electoral commission. The electoral platform, ladies and gentlemen, has created a peaceful battlefield in which political parties and individuals who seek to attain political power can compete for votes. South Africa has held regular national, provincial, and local government elections which have been free and fair. Different views, political or otherwise, are allowed, tolerated, and protected by law. And we've been saying that 2024 was a landmark where the national election where majority party lost its majority. And we keep on saying, if you look at many countries, you'd have had the Kasbans everywhere. You'd have had opposition parties arrested. It didn't happen in South Africa. It affirms the rule of law, but a choice by leaders to continue on the values of the Constitution. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tolerance and belonging, in the sense, are not symbolic. They are legal, lived, and enforceable. They mean that no one is invisible before the law, no one is excluded from its protection, and no one's dignity is negotiable. They require recognizing the equal dignity for those with whom we profoundly disagree. Freedom of expression, association, belief, and consciousness are the lifeblood of open society, but they endure only where tolerance is actively cultivated and legally protected. Constitutionalism provides the framework within which such disagreements can be resolved peacefully and with dignity, through institutions, dialogue, and lawful processes rather than coercion or violence. In South Africa, we have strengthened this architecture through legislation such as the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, supported by equality courts, to give practical effect to our constitutional vision of unity in diversity. Sadly, as a country, citizens have yet to engage meaningfully with mechanisms for this to be a major impact. When we look at our statistics in terms of the Equality Court, we're not seeing South Africans utilizing this, and we advocate for many of them to utilize the Equality Court as a mechanism. The third area the researchers have identified, they say that constitutions ought to ensure that institutions and representatives act on behalf of the people and not in self-serving manner, thereby limiting agency costs, is important. The preamble of the Constitution says, amongst other things, that we are all enjoined to lay the foundation for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. The electoral outcomes over the years have demonstrated that the people freely elected their representatives, and in cases where representatives act in a manner that is self-serving, the people are able to hold them accountable, either through protest that are protected by the law or through their electoral choices. The will of the people have been the determinant factor on who becomes a public representative. Whether the electoral system currently in existence provides for optimal representation and accountability is a debate that has been ongoing, and amendments have been made to our electoral system to reflect these conversations. Fourthly, and the last area the researchers have identified, they say they are aware that constitutional structures are required in order to address the provision of public goods, which cannot be provided by citizens alone. The most tangible measure of social contract between the state and its citizens is service delivery, water that flows through the taps, lights that stays on, clinics that functions, schools that educates, and roads that connect people and communities. We have extended socio-economic rights such as electricity, water, houses, etc. to many poor households, in line with the Constitutional Court ruling, which held that the provision of socio-economic rights by the state is subject to the principle of progressive realization of these rights and the availability of resources. In many circumstances, these basics have failed us. Load shedding became the order of the day and led to citizens being unhappy. Water shortages became a problem, and currently in some of the areas, it's a matter that Minister Majudina is still addressing. But the challenges where we've seen the collapse of our municipalities, the deterioration of our infrastructure are not just a mere inconvenience to our population. They strike at the heart of public trust and the confidence in the state. Ladies and gentlemen, corruption, persistent resource constraint, and uneven implementation of programs and projects have each, in different measures, drawn the pace of delivery away from what the legal framework envisioned. In this connection, we have already admitted that the law in our country has advanced with considerable greater speed and clarity than the material reality it was designed to transform. The fault does not lie on the framework, but the administrative and financial conditions necessary to give it full effect have not been consistently sustained. So the implementation is uneven. In other areas you see success, in other areas you see the difficulties. Emerging discourse around constitutional interpretation and human rights is an opportunity for citizens, legal scholars, and practitioners to engage meaningfully with the law. Such engagements contribute to shaping future jurisprudence and policy making, ensuring they resonate with the aspirations of the population. We do need the academia to do rigorously research, to provide the evidence-based research or even policy that can be developed based on evidence-based, so that we can sustain our democracy but secure our future. Academia needs to help us understand the impact of our laws through a critical, objective lens that we need. Academic research was critical in drafting the 1993 interim constitution. Universities served as a think tanks for the creation of post-1994 policy framework, which later became the basis for government-mirrored white paper policy documents in many departments. In their contribution to the discourse, the Human Science Research Council has published a book titled The Future South Africa We Want, Democracy at 30. The book's collection of research findings captures 30 years of democracy through the lived experiences of diverse South African communities, moving from Kwakwa to Vuane, Soweto, Langa, Luka, Platfontein, and beyond. The book focuses on citizens and reflects on progress, frustration, resilience, and aspirations for a better future. The narrative blends grassroots voices with scholarly analysis to offer a textured portrait of South Africa's democracy as both a promise and a struggle, framed within the broader African and global context. There are opportunities for academia to add to the research about our constitutional democracy and our experiences and our experiment. As for our role as the media, the fourth estate remains very critical. We urge you to move beyond the headlines to provide deep, contextual reporting that educates the public on their rights and the complexities to governance. From the Watergate scandal to South Africa's state capture investigations, the media has historically used its power to expose corruption and curb authoritarian overreach. The media wields the power to amplify voices that are otherwise unheard or ignored. When strategically employed, its coverage holds the potential to galvanize responses and influence public policy making. Unveiling human rights violation in the public domain empowers community members to exert pressure, holding both business and government accountable and offering essential counter-narrative. As we commemorate the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution this year, we affirm that our future will not be built by forgetting where we come from, but by acting with courage on what we have learned, united by one Constitution, inspired by one shared destiny, and bound by a collective responsibility to one another. We reflect, we renew, we recommit to completing the work of justice, restoration, and nation building. I'm looking forward to today's deliberation as they will enrich our country's constitutional discourse, but our work as the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister, for reminding us of the journey we've traveled, the responsibility we have as members of the Fourth Estate, but also as South Africans to guard the Constitution and our democracy with jealousy, but also the responsibility we have to educate and also to ensure that we foster collaborations. Speaking of collaborations and education, we're now going to move into the last phase of the evening's program. I'll invite panel members that will join me on stage as we dissect, remove one layer after the other, and also zoom into the different elements of the 30 years of our Constitution. Advocate Andy Mutibi, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, you are invited to the floor. Mr. Leonard Lekgetho, the Acting Head of the Special Investigating Unit, an invitation is extended to you, sir. Prof. Paul Mudau, Associate Professor, UNISA College of Law, Department of Public and Constitutional and International Law. Yes, sir. Ms. Antoinette Slabert, Chairperson of the National Press Club. So we'll have a conversation. I'm mindful of time, so I'll try to keep the conversation as focused as we can, and we'll make an opportunity available to get one or two comments from the floor as we reflect on the 30 years of the Constitution. I think we've given already a background in terms of why we gathered today, as we reflect on the 30 years of our democracy, but also we address the issue of rights, responsibilities, because in any case, the Constitution gives you rights as South Africans, but it also has embedded into it the responsibilities that you and I carry as South Africans. Broadly speaking, one would argue that our Constitution was drafted to achieve peace. We came from a very blood-drenched past. It was meant to forge unity. Minister spoke about the different departments of justice that had to be brought together to create one unitary South Africa. And also it seeks to bring stability after many years of painful as well as violent struggle. And one would ask, on this 30th year, can we reflect on the journey, how we have extended that Constitution to our communities? Let me start first with Prof here. Academics are independent voices, and they can get into the heart of it. Of course, independence doesn't mean adversarial, though. Prof?
Yes. All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. Last week, the Constitutional Court issued a judgment in the case of South African Human Rights Commission versus Agro
I think I
Data.
forgot my document. You see,
So the judgment
where I was sitting.
states that the Human Rights Commission does not have binding decisions, but it can take steps to secure the enforcement of those rights. The only time when the decision of the Human Rights Commission is binding, it's when the matter comes before the court of law. So 30 years after the adoption of the Constitution, I was surprised when I saw on social media people celebrating that the judgment was taken against the Human Rights Commission. One of the things that contributed to this celebration is that the Human Rights Commission of late is being judged for taking decisions that are contrary to the interest of South African citizens. Because Minister Kubayi spoke of issues that relates to housing, access to education, even water, and employment opportunities as well. You may find that illegal, undocumented fellow Africans, they come to South Africa for greener pastures, and they are vying for the same resources as together against, not against, but together with South African citizens. So South Africans, they feel that the decisions that are taken by the Human Rights Commission are contrary to their own interest. So how do we balance a situation where it's 30 years of adopting the Constitution, but we see South Africans, they say the state institutions that are there to support constitutional democracy are actually serving against their own interest. We can't celebrate a decision where we say this Human Rights Commission is not actually supposed to execute its responsibilities. This serves contrary to the democratic ethos which we intended to achieve in the long term.
Okay. Thank you. Advocate Mtibi, if I may just go to you, sir. One of the key challenges that South Africans face, and I think Minister did address and spoke to that point, is the issue of the rule of law. And there's a general feeling among certain sections of society that our constitution seems to be more inclined towards protecting certain individuals. Others go as far as to argue that, you know, how do we ensure that the rule of law is not threatened? Because that's the one area that we have that separates us from the state that Tom Hobbes called the state of nature, where life is short and brutish, as he called it. You know, as the NPA, and I mean, I'm throwing this at you, Advocate, because I know that when you were at SIU, you sent cases to NPA. Now you're at the NPA. So if you can just, you know, just expand further on that particular point.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for that, and thanks for the invitation. Let me acknowledge the Minister and the DM. It's the rule of law is really sacrosanct in terms of ensuring that there's justice in our country. As the Minister alluded, Chapter 2 of the Constitution enshrines a number of rights. It's called the Bill of Rights. And you know that it's based on some of the universal human rights documents, and of course one of the most important document of the ruling party, which is the Freedom Charter, and the aspirations of the people are enshrined there. Now, to come back to the rule of law, is that there is a great expectation by the citizens of our country, and of course those who live in South Africa, that when there are legal disputes, they will be adjudicated upon in a manner that satisfies their expectation, in a fair manner, and of course in the business that I'm in, that will prosecute without fear, favor, or prejudice. You know that concept of prosecuting without fear, favor, or prejudice, it really goes a long way. We can unpack it throughout the night. But it really just means that there's one other related concept. One other related concept is that justice must not just be done. It must be seen to be done.
Exactly.
It's another related concept, right? So the Constitution goes a long way in guaranteeing that. Again, in the business where I am, the Constitution has realized that as part of protecting these rights, right, you required various institutions. The Minister alluded to that. Those are in Chapter 9. But of course, Section 179 of the Constitution establishes a single prosecuting authority. And if you look into the Bill of Rights, there is a provision which guarantees those who are arrested, detained, and accused. And you know, historically, you would have those instances where people were detained without trial, and there's a whole lot of history behind. So the rule of law really is a cornerstone of ensuring that social disputes or disputes relating to communities and the public are adjudicated upon in a manner that meets their, justice expectation. Right. So, so to a large extent, we have demonstrated that as a country. Right?
Thank you.
Just last night I was listening to one of the channels, international channels, where the former FBI director has been indicted, right? And I think he's indicted, of course, to appear in court. And one of the comments he made was that we still have hope in the independence of the judiciary. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the pronunciation that we can make in our country as well.
Absolutely.
So the rule of law depends on strong institutions, strong NPA, strong special investigating unit, strong police, strong institutions that would ensure that witnesses are protected. As you may have observed of late, that the minister presented the bill that will go a long way in improving that those who report, the whistleblowers that is, are protected.
Yeah.
So all of this is really a package.
True.
It's a package of ensuring that there is a recognition and observance of the rule of law.
Indeed.
And it should be applied in impartially. That impartiality, it may sound, really as not as easy to implement, but impartiality is very, very important. Everyone expects the law to apply equally. There's that say again that say everyone is equal before the law. It must be seen to be done. As we administer justice, our public must be seen that it's administered equally. Everyone who reports a case must enjoy the same investigation that it's investigated when it's reported by everyone across all levels of society.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll pause here and come back if necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Lekgetho, I mean, you're fairly new in that portfolio, but I know you're not new in that institution. The mandate that was given to the Special Investigations Unit, it largely is around, investigation of serious crimes that are linked to any corruptions, any malpractices within state institutions. The state is a big player in the economy of South Africa, whether it's from public institutions or public enterprises to government departments. Because of the significance of the state in the economy of this country, any malpractice and any corruption in any state institution has a bearing in terms of how it affects the confidence levels, as the minister said. And those other levels, among others, are things that happen at local government level. How have you, as the SIU, used your might and your proclamations to ensure that you restore the faith of South Africans once again in the work of the criminal justice system in South Africa?
No, thank you, Honorable Chair, and let me also acknowledge the Minister and the Deputy Minister and everybody present and my panelists. I think a lot has been said. But maybe to start with, particularly zoom into the issue about the Constitution. If you'll notice, every time when we present, I think the third slide, we do indicate the issue of the Constitution. Because for SIU, what is important for us is to safeguard the Constitution and the rule of law. In that slide, what we normally put, we put section 195, which talks about the principle governing administration, where we make sure that whatever we do, there's an element, there's an ethics and the efficiency in terms of what we do. And there's also section 32, which talks to access to information, which is very, very important, whereby we make sure that information that we obtain, and even the public, as they require information from us, they are able to access that information. And also section 34, which talks about access to court, which is very, very important. As you know, we've got a special tribunal. And lastly, section 33, which talks to just administrative action, which talks about the decision that we make must be fair so that everybody can go through the process quite efficiently. But based on what you are talking about, our role is to make sure that we safeguard the Constitution, we safeguard the state resources, and we do that through investigation. And through our investigation, we investigate corruption, maladministration, and malpractice. And out of those processes, like we've indicated, we make sure that if there's any criminality, we refer to NPA, and if there's any misconduct, we refer it to the department. And what is important is the systemic recommendation that we make in order to make sure that whatever has happened does not happen again. So in that way, that's the way that we try to make sure that we improve our system, we improve our governance in the country. And what is important also about Constitution, and particularly zoom into the mandate of SIU, is section 1217, where it talks about the procurement. Most of our work is largely based on procurement, investigating procurement, where we make sure that it's fair, it's equitable, and it's everybody is transparent, whereby everybody can have access and able to have share into it. So those are the things that we do. So apart from being investigative, we make sure that this principle, the section that I've indicated, are outlined there so that everybody knows that as we do our investigation, we are also cognizant of the Constitution, that whatever we do, we are accountable to the public in terms of the work that we do. And we make sure that whatever we do can able to stand in the court of law, so that whoever can able to take us we can able to defend it. And we have had challenge where people took the SIU to court, where it also went to the Constitution, of which this is the type of the Constitution that we have, whereby it's able to be tested and it's able to be transformed. So I think I'll just end here, but I'll come back in order to expatiate more in terms of some of the things that we do in order to uphold the rule of law.
Thank you. Antoinette, you're a practicing journalist, and one of the key points that were raised by Deputy Minister and highlighted by Minister is the role of the media in a democratic dispensation. And I suppose the challenge that I've observed, and you'd correct me, it's around how the media doesn't know how to relate to government anymore in a democratic order. It's easy to oppose in an apartheid system. The lines were clear. These ones were wrong. This group is right. What is the role of media in terms of, popularizing the Constitution, the rights of individuals, but also a public service role and duty that it should be playing, especially if you look at the different rights that are, afforded to all South Africans? And have we done well as the media?
Most journalists are very practical people. We just want to get the job done. We love our job, and we are a little bit activists as well. And the Constitution gives us the most wonderful tools. Sure. So the obvious one is freedom of expression. We are allowed to do our jobs like we were not allowed to do under apartheid. But apart from freedom of expression, there's something like Mr. Lekgete mentioned, access to information. I can ask questions. If they don't want to answer me, I can submit a PIA application. If they don't respond to that, I can go to court. I can enforce those rights to access the information. Administrative justice. that was also mentioned. There are rules about how government and even the private sector must interact with citizens. And when I think it was the minister who said, we amplify voices. When I amplify the voice of an old woman who cannot access cancer treatment, or whatever the case may be, I can look at that Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, which is based on the Constitution, and I can look at what the benchmark is. How should the hospital or the clinic or the pharmacy or whoever the functionary is, how they should have acted towards that person. And it's very easy to summarize the Constitution.
Yeah.
You look at freedom, equality, and dignity. And then you can assess whether a person has been treated fairly or not. Whether we've done well, I think it's a mixed bag. We have fantastic investigative journalists in our country. We wouldn't have known about Life Esidimeni, we wouldn't have known about Tembisa Hospital and so many other big problems in our country. But there are also the shortcomings. Unfortunately, newsrooms have shrunk. There's a move towards freelancing. Many platforms don't have big full-time staff. They use freelancers. And I don't think our institutions and our government has really taken note of that. Because with that comes problems. For example, if I have to submit a PAIA application, it takes time. As a freelancer, I don't have time to spend on one story because I must earn money. I don't get a salary. Same thing with legal threats. I'm sitting actually on a big story at the moment, but I have to find a platform that will stand behind me if I get sued.
Yeah.
So there are those
Yes,
issues.
yes.
Government is wonderful in focusing on community media, and I'm so glad for that, because large newsrooms don't have the resources and the staff anymore to move out to the rural areas, unfortunately. Community media can do it, but the freelancers are still not properly addressed.
Thanks, Antoinette. Prof, one of the key areas that have been in the public domain has largely been around the protection of whistleblowers.
Yeah.
And there's been too many cases of individuals who have been linked to whistleblowing and who's, who were killed. And the debate has always been around, are we doing enough to protect whistleblowers? And I think a democratic dispensation promises a transparent administration, and from your own research and from your analysis, what, are we doing enough to protect whistleblowers? Do we have enough laws to ensure that whenever an individual has shared the information with the relevant authorities, that there are instruments the state makes available to protect such?
Yeah, thank you for the question. My answer to that question is we have ample, impressive laws that are in existence. So it's just a matter of execution. And it's unfortunate that in certain instances, whistleblowers themselves, some of them, they exercise the right not to require protection from the state. In cases where some of them, they could do. For instance, I believe most of us who could be aware of one witness blower who appeared before the Madlanga Commission, and the witness blower decided not to receive state protection. And when he became a victim of homicide, there was allegations that the state did not offer sufficient protection, which I don't believe it was supposed to be the case. So it's a matter of implementation. And obviously research shows that indeed whistleblowers, most of them are being killed. I'm not sure because myself personally, I've not conducted a qualitative research wherein I try to specifically find out on my own. But based on what I've read from other people's papers, it seems like there is a disjuncture in terms of applying the law in relation to protecting whistleblowers. Yes.
Yes. Advocate Mutibi, one of the key requirements for any functioning democracy is the agility of the prosecution authority in terms of ensuring the rule of law is upheld. And over the past few years, the questions around the ability and the efficacy of the NPA in terms of dealing with some of the cases, that question has always come up numerous times. And I think it's an opportunity to share with the audience in terms of the plans we have for the National Prosecuting Authority going forward and restore the faith of South Africans in the rule of law, because at the heart of it, it's if South Africans don't have trust and hope in the institutions that the state makes available to ensure the rule of law, we are teetering on the brink of lawlessness. Your comment.
No, thanks again for that question. It is very clear that from the point of view of the public observation is that the country is plagued by crime. If you listened to the State of the Nation by the President, he specifically, amongst others, referred to organized crime as one of the crime types. He said organized crime is singularly threatening our democracy. Right? And organized crime has got various crimes in it. Right? Extortion is one of the organized crimes. Our analysis is that corruption is also one of the organized crimes. It's committed in an organized way. And there's various other, illicit goods that are flooding the country are brought into the country in an organized way. Illegal mining is organized. So that's some of the crimes that really are plaguing our country. GBV, crimes relating to gender, gender-based violence and femicide. That's one of the critical crimes that are plaguing our country. Now, that being the case, our public needs to see that we are acting decisively in prosecuting these crimes, right? So we are hard at work across the criminal justice cluster with the police. We have engaged as NPA, we have engaged with the police in terms of what is it that we require as an improvement. We are going to be improving on the collaboration between the police and NPA. And that is not a new concept. There is a concept called prosecutor-guided investigations, right? There's another one called prosecutor-led concept, prosecutor-led investigations. Prosecutor-led investigations, you'll find that in IDEC, Investigative Directorate Against Corruption. Those who know about the Scorpions before, you would also find that concept in the Scorpions. So we want to strengthen that part so that it does the following. When investigations, in all crimes that are reported, when investigations are conducted in a manner that are guided by the prosecutor, you are likely to have at the end a docket that is ready to be enrolled. If there are still further investigations required, it will be minimal. Unlike now, when the investigations are done and the docket is submitted to the prosecutor, from time to time there's postponements for further investigation, So the prosecutor-guided investigations mitigates the need for further investigations that are ad nauseum, going on, and that is going to speed up the trial, and that is going to speed up the administration of justice so that the victims of crime can see that justice has been done, their cases are handled speedily.
Yeah.
Right? So that is a very important part, amongst others, that we are going to do. I mean, there's various number of strategic objectives, which I will not mention all of them, but of importance is to ensure that, you know, we've got capacity in the prosecution.
Great.
Right? If you followed the public statement that we made recently, you would have seen that we actually weighed in on the kind of performance that NPA has been delivering over the years. And you would see that the conviction rates have really been improving. So of importance is for the public to see and to know that there are cases that are handled on a daily basis. Prosecutors, colleagues are hard at work on a daily basis. And we've got, and I was talking to our colleagues, Tate Khanyago and his team at NPA, that these internal communications that says NPA in court today, there's various number of cases that are shown to be completed.
Yeah.
We need to take that one way or another outside to the public to show that on any given day, there's convictions, the sentences, and the justice is being meted out.
Great.
So that falls in the domain of improving communications.
Yeah.
So that the work of NPA is out there, is communicated to the public such that they can see. Right? Now, in terms of skills, there's various skills that we require, in particular financial skills and so on. Right? I mean, you would know. And the cyber skills in particular.
Yes.
Cyber skills in particular.
Yes.
At the moment, if you are not up to scratch as an investigating unit or as a prosecuting authority, and you are not up to scratch with the cyber skills, you'll be left behind. Right? The crime is committed in the main in the cyberspace. So we're going to build up on that.
Yeah.
Just really an example, and this is an example that you can observe as we speak. The Madlanga Commission, right? The Madlanga Commission has released its first interim report to the President. Right? And the President has given a directive that a task team be established. Right? As you can hear, I mean, we listen to the public comments. You know, what's going on in Madlanga has caused consternation. Has caused consternation to the public. Yes. Right? So we need to make sure that we can demonstrate that we act on the outcomes. We can demonstrate that we act on the outcomes of the Madlanga Commission. Absolutely. And you would have seen that the prosecution and the police are working together. The prosecutor-guided investigation is really showcased there. You would have seen some of the arrests and watch the space for more arrests that are coming. We are ensuring that we are ensuring that we showcase the collaboration, investigators supported by the prosecutors, to ensure that we bring out dockets that are court ready.
Yeah.
Right? So it is very important. But another important area, as I not take too long,
yes.
Another important area of NPA is the asset forfeiture unit. Right? The asset forfeiture unit really fulfills a very important aspect. Right? Our core mandate is prosecution, right? But we do have an asset forfeiture unit because that unit ensures that we dismantle, we disempower the criminals, right? Because they go all out and gather these assets on a criminal basis, corruptly, and so on, and they use the funds generated from all these criminals to fight these cases, fight us, right? And they go on and on. They hire the silks, you know, senior counsels and so on. So now, what we are doing, and you're going to see it in action even now, we are we are going to continue to really seize these assets that evidence has shown that they've been gained corruptly. And by doing so, we make sure that the assets are brought back into the fiscus in the form of money, of course. We've got what we call the criminal asset recovery account, CARA account. When we recover these assets, that money goes into CARA, and the purpose of that money is to be used to improve on the criminal or the fighting capability of the state, or any other capability that would contribute into the fight against corruption, crime, and so on. So the asset forfeiture, asset recovery plays a very key role, and that is where we share, the similarities with the Special Investigating Unit. The point you raised earlier on, we are on it. The cases that have been referred, I've been informed. In fact, most of the questions I get is that you can't differ with the referrals that you have made when you were still at SIU. So we are working. We are working with the SIU to make sure that those matters are acted upon, ultimately, so that there's consequence management in all its permutations, whether it's criminal, civil, or disciplinary, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come to you, Antoinette, but and I think for me, at the heart of our success as a democracy, it's about the state showing those that don't respect the power of the state, that the state can push back. When citizens vote for any government, they transfer the right to use violence to the state. I'm saying to the state, I'm giving you the power to use violence on my behalf. You have a police service, you have a court of law, you've got everyone. And you don't want citizens to lose faith, because then you see kangaroo courts emerging in different areas. And I like the input that you made there, Advocate. If you can weigh in on that input, because I know that the work of the SIU and NPA, there's a lot of collaborations with cases going the other way, and I saw you nodding your head. I'm sure you've got some more inputs you want to deposit to enhance and improve the input.
Yes, thank you so much. I do agree with what advocates say, and I'm one of those person where when he went there, say, hey, go to that room and check our referrals, what happened to them, so that we can see action.
Yes.
But in terms of the process, I think we supplement what he said in terms of the asset forfeiture unit. As you know that with the SIU also, our mandate is to recover, and we make sure that we recover all the money that is taken. Luckily for us, there is a special tribunal court which is specifically dealing with SIU matter. So as a result, it speed up the process, which is one of the gains that we have in terms of turning our matters around. And also in terms of enforcing that process, we make sure that we upskill ourselves, because what we have seen now is that criminals hide money through cryptocurrency and other forms. So what we have done as the SIU, we have established the Cybercrime Anti-Corruption Academy. The academy is geared towards impacting knowledge to all the law enforcement and also outside the country. So far, we have trained many institutions inside and outside the country in terms of the use of the AI and the open source information, whereby we are able to generate information on the internet, on the web, on the web, whereby it helps us in terms of advancing our investigation to make sure that we turnaround time is it's done speedily in terms of investigation. And also, what is critical for us is the issue of prevention. We are pushing prevention so hard because we have seen that in terms of being reactive, it takes a lot of effort and it's very expensive to investigate than to prevent. So there are some of the process that we have engaged. There's currently a national anti-corruption prevention framework that is currently ongoing through government processes, whereby through it we aim to make sure that prevention is key. And the other thing that we do, we also do data analytics in order to do predictive model so that we can able to see the pattern of crime and what are the issues that are happening. And we are able to advise a state institution to say, in order for you to safeguard your process or your system, this is what you need to do. The other thing that we're also introducing is the lifestyle audit to make sure that we prevent by conducting lifestyle audit in all the official. And in most instances, it acts as a deterrent because people knows that there will be lifestyle audit conducted on me. In that way, it helps in terms of reducing corruption. And the other thing is, as the SIU, we make sure that we digitize our process. In that way, it helps us in order to make sure that whatever we send to NPA, there's a trail, and it's something that can be safeguarded.
Yes.
There isn't any issue like the docket or the information is lost. Everything is there in the system. So we are working quite well together in order to make sure that we uphold the rule of law. Particularly on our side, we make sure that we get money, and after getting money, we refer you to NPA so that you don't use that same money in order to fight us when we refer you for criminality.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Antoinette, you want to make an intervention?
Yes, I get so excited when Advocate Mutibi says these things must be communicated, because now you're talking to us in the media as a channel to the citizens of the country. But I want to ask you, isn't there a way to make information more easily accessible to journalists? I mean, people like Kaiser, they are working very hard with the inquiries, but it's a manual process. I have to phone or I have to email the spokesperson or the prosecutor at a specific court or in a specific case. Please, if you can just apply your mind and think about the digital system where there's where information can be accessed in a more modern and easy way, because it is really quite a challenge to find out where is the case now, when has it been postponed to, what has happened.
Yeah.
My plea.
No, if I may.
Yes, yes.
No, thank you. That we really take that to heart, Antoinette. And part of the plan really is how is it that we can continue to improve on the reach to the public, right? There's various mediums and channels that we use that journalists or media plays a very important role. As the minister said it, that the role of media really cannot be questioned in terms of the role they play in exposing, some of the criminality in the country. But a corresponding duty onto the media, and hopefully some are also listening, is really to ensure that the reportage is such that it assists in the administration of justice, right? And I'll give you an example that a Sunday Time that I read, and I'm using Sunday Time because the story was there on the Sunday Time. Right? It was first page, fine, it attracted, I'm sure a number of sales for the Sunday Time and so on. But you know what it did? It now scared the witness that was supposed to work with us, because he's out there, the exposition of what's in the affidavit of the witness. So the point we are really saying is that balance out. Balance out such that the public is informed, but you also assist us in the administration of justice, where there's respect in terms of some of the information that can prejudice the cases across. But of course the role of the media is very critical. So the platforms of communication and, our colleagues across agencies, SIU, NPA, and Tatebaloi is there from GCIS. You all know that GCIS stands for Government Communications, in agency, right? That's really where government communicates to the public. So we also want to tap into the capability that they have, because they have a wider reach to the public. We've dissected the audience that we need to reach. Various audiences uses various mechanisms. You've got the rural audience that you have to devise your communication mechanism such that you reach out to them, right? You've got various audiences, those who use phones and so on, they use the applications, various forms of applications, right? So it is very, very important that we communicate in a manner that is consumable by various members of the community. So we are hard at work on ensuring that we improve that, so that you can also pick up on what we communicate and communicate to the public wider. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Advocate Mutibi. I think we will close it at that point. Advocate Andy Mutibi, National Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Leonard Lekgetho, Acting Head of SIU, Professor Paul Mudau, Associate Professor, UNISA College of Law, Department of Public, Constitutional and International Law, and Antoinette Slabert, Chairperson of the National Press Club. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Before you go back to your seats, I'm told there might be some goodies that will not need an investigation after you've been given. Just a simple declaration will be enough as per the PFMA. Okay. As we await the delivery of the thank you tokens of appreciation, Prof. Walter Matley, Executive Dean and CEO of the Graduate School of Business, will be on standby to do the vote of thanks. You're going to hand over. Should I give them? This for. Okay. Since I'm on stage and I have a microphone, I will give myself the powers to do this. No, relabogile. Thank you. Thank you, Relagat. Thanks. It's not a famous bag, this one. Thank you. Antoinette, thank you. Thank you so much, Advocate. Thank you, Lekgetho. Prof, thank you so much. And Antoinette, thank you. We will now invite Prof Matley for the vote of thanks on behalf of the university.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making time and making sure that you stay until this late. First of all, let me take this chance to thank the program director for the stellar work for carrying out this session. Thank you very much, Mr. Modise, the Minister, Deputy Minister, our panel members, our UNISA management, SPL management, our partner, National Press Club, and all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, mine is just to say thank you for coming here, but also to reflect on what was said throughout this session. Number one, first part we have picked up from the minister's speech that it was centered around academia. The minister used 4 pillars based on her keynote work which looked at academia. The minister pointed out that academics used to be think tankers and also assist government in producing knowledge. The minister also highlighted that we need to reflect, renew as a nation, and also what is important that came out from the DM. As I was sitting there, I was just thinking of our national development plan and looking at the plans that were highlighted in 2011 by the leadership of Trevor Manuel then, highlighting the challenges that South Africa has and how best we can work towards addressing those challenges. We're about, 4 years towards 2030. As we reflect on the Constitution, it becomes important to go back to those chapters in the NDP and reflect how far are we in achieving those goals. And also maybe to highlight that as the university, we've also contributed towards the education part of the NDP in terms of growing the timber of academics through the program of adjunct academics that we've produced, that the NDP highlights very clearly that there's a serious disjoint when you look at the BRICS country states, that as South Africa, the number of PhD graduates that you produce, they're very little that as compared to other BRICS countries. But there are mechanisms in place that the UNISA has put to make sure that we increase in that area. And also from the panel, I think you also touched on Tembisa Hospital, Hammanskraal, and looking at the Constitution. I think one thing that we need to reflect on is to ask ourselves, what does it take time for us to address challenges of water that we see in Hammanskraal? But if there's a water pipe burst in Waterkloof Glen, Waterkloof Ridge, within 24 hours, that water burst is sorted out. So these are some of the structural challenges. As sociologists such as Gideon highlight, that there are structural challenges that we need to address, not only as government, but also as academics, and also everyone in society to addressing those challenges. Lastly, maybe just use this opportunity to encourage you that do visit our website, SPL website. We've got interesting formal programs and also executive education programs for executives which are more short and tailor-made. And also we're looking, our doors are open to do partnership just like we have with the National Press Club to see how best we can work for societal impact. Do visit our website and let's see how best we can contribute towards making South Africa better. What is important that you pick up is this work cannot be we cannot rely on government to do everything. We talk of unemployment. I think Antoinette from the panel talked about gig economy, that you said you are freelancing. Again, this is where the world of work is moving. We are moving towards the digital labor platforms where most of the work opportunities are going to come from gig economy because of a gig work that is done, especially in journalism. I think when you look at the role of what journalism used to do then, maybe in our times when I was reporting for a community radio station, it's different from what it is today. Today you need to be a tested journalist for you to make sure that they don't only focus on producing stories, but you take other roles in assisting government, academia, and business, becoming fixers when there are problems that require your skills as a journalist, especially for reporters. Maybe that's an engagement you need to have with the National Press Club in terms of how to grow, how to assist also as the institution towards that goal. So, Program Director, I'll end there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.
Still here, I'm going to invite Minister and Deputy Minister for the handover of the gifts by Prof to the respective principals. DMN Minister. Yeah, Prof. Prof. Yeah. Yes, Minister. Thank you. Minister and Deputy Minister, I really appreciate you making time to be with us up until this time of the night. We understand the pressures that you have to endure. I know how that national portfolio can be. The whole country is your office, but you chose to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a group photo as well, just before, DM and Minister, before you take to your seats. Can I ask panel members to join Minister and Deputy Minister for a group photo? They didn't say this, but I'm sure the moderator is part of the group photo. When you have power, you have to use it, right? If we can remove this, yeah. Okay. No, I. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, GM. Thank you to panel members for having joined the session. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the end of the program, but I've got a few announcements to make. Buffet, the 3 front tables to dish up first. Those 3 are the ones that were written reserved. So it's 1, 2, 3. But the first is this one. The second will be this one. And the third will be that one. Don't ask me how I decided 2 will be this one, because there were women looking at me, and when I arrived in this world, my mom was surrounded by female nurses. When I went to primary school, it was females that taught me. So, you know, blame that. And so we have a round table with South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, next week on the 8th of May. They will celebrate 20 years, and the same venue will be hosting us for that 20 years of SASSA. We're launching a book with Andries Nel, one of the press club members. That's happening next week on the 16th of May at Freedom Park. Join us for that illuminating evening. He writes on community media, and I think it's going to be quite a robust engagement, given that one of the key products of a democratic dispensation, when we started in '94, community media was one of the key institutions that were given the powers to devolve democracy to communities. The 29th of May, we're hosting our Newsmaker of the Year 2025. And you know who the Newsmaker is, right? So you sure don't want to miss this one. So the Newsmaker is the guy who gave birth to all of these conversations and all of these commissions and everyone, right? As well as Journalist of the Year Award 2025, which opened last Friday, and submissions can be made via the website. You go www.nationalpressclub.co.za. Category winners tend to win 30K, and overall winners of the award will walk away with 100K. So in this day and age of petrol price going up, that's good money, right? Entrants have to be members of the National Press Club in good standing, so you have an opportunity to join if you're not a member yet. So this year we'll also introduce a special campus radio category. One of our members last year lost his life, Asiri Ndlovu. His lifeless body was found dumped together with their partners. So we thought